Hello, my beautiful sisters. Welcome to another day at the Startup Herpreneurs Summit. And today we have Alexandra Carruthers. Did I say your last name right? Because your last name is fun to say.
Carruthers.
Carruthers. Man, I was off. Okay. Alexandra Carruthers. I've heard your first name many times, your last name, not as much. But Alexandra is an intuitive leadership coach for female entrepreneurs. So say hi to her because she's perfect for you. She helps women claim their power, deepen their intuition, and connect to their spirit and heal their energetic blocks that hold them back from success. So 101 here, if you are having a roadblock and you started your business and you're trying to figure out like what is happening, why isn't this working for me? Alex is going to be the girl for you to go to and really listen to. So today I'm really excited for her to really get to talk about her story and really going into detail on what is vibration and how to move that forward with your business. So without further ado, Alex, can you say a little bit more about like your story and your background so people can relate to you better along the way?
Sure. So I started my business. I'm 28, almost 29 now. I started my business when I was 24. And before becoming an entrepreneur, I worked as a reporter. So I went to university for 4 years, studied journalism, got my first big girl job at a newspaper, thought this was like what I was meant to do, was like amazing. And then started working in the 9 to 5 daily journalism grind, quickly realized this was not for me. I was super sensitive. I was having a lot of anxiety. I was like, oh my God, like I don't know what to do with my life now because this job that I went to school for, spent all my money on, I'm 22, this is my whole life, isn't working out for me. Like, oh my gosh, cue quarter life crisis. So in going through this quarter life crisis, I came into all these spiritual tools, came into all of this awareness, went through, I like to call, long story short, a spiritual awakening. And as a result of that, found coaching and was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a coach. I want to start a business. And so I started putting one foot in front of the other, began doing desire map workshops. I don't know if any of your audience is familiar with Danielle Laporte. She's a really famous spiritual author. And so she wrote a book called The Desire Map, and that book really rocked my world. So I started doing her workshops, and then that just evolved into coaching. So I've been doing that for the last 4 years. And I really work with women on energetics, right? I really believe that when you're starting a business, it is so important for you to understand who you are, to understand how to listen to your intuition, to be emotionally intelligent, because what makes an entrepreneur different from somebody who chooses to work in, a more traditional role where you're essentially listening to somebody else and taking cues from somebody else and working as part of a team, right, is that you're a trailblazer. And so for you to be a trailblazer and for you to be somebody who creates their own thing, you have to listen to your inner voice and you have to be willing to be self-aware and to grow, or else your business isn't going to go anywhere, because in the beginning you are your business. So that's really what I work with women on. That's been what I've loved diving into over the last few years, and my superpower, I like to call it.
Yes, I love that. They're superpowered. Dun, dun, dun. I'm a complete nerd. That was one thing you'll learn from me very quickly.
Cute.
Jokes all the time, and I'll start talking about the Avengers and making it into business. So I totally get it.
Awesome.
When it comes to energetics and vibration, well, first let me back up. What is energetics and vibrations? Someone that's paying attention and isn't part of the woo-woo club yet, but is about to.
Cool. So I'll make this really simple for you. So if you take this pen and you take this glass of water and you take that tapestry behind you and you take my body and you break all of those different things down into the smallest pieces, particles that you can, you're going to see moving particles bouncing off each other, right? When you break everything down in this universe, it is of the same essence, right? This is energy, right? Your energy is the essence that essentially forms you, right? And everything in this universe, based on how fast or slow those particles are moving and vibrating, has a frequency, has a vibration, right? So we live in a universe, a lot of people have probably heard of the law of attraction, right? Where one of the primary laws that's operating in our universe is the law of attraction, meaning like vibrations attract like vibrations, right? So what it means to get into vibrational alignment, what it means to, talk about good vibes, is essentially creating an energetic state within your body that aligns with the life that you want to be experiencing, right? So to feel abundance and to feel luxury, so that you line up with it, in our reality with things that match that frequency. So that's essentially energy, vibrations, how it all works and how it all relates to growth 101.
Got it. So you kind of gave me like science and spiritual in one. Love it.
Yeah.
So how do we use vibrations for like to move our business forward in general?
Well, you are your business, right? Like as an entrepreneur, when you're starting your business, you are like, it is your energy that's creating that. It's like your business is essentially something you're birthing and you're creating from you, right? So understanding like when you're beginning, like getting into alignment with the type of business that you want to run and being the type of woman you have to be to run that business is what's, I really believe, going to indicate whether you're successful or not. Right? We were chatting about this before we started recording this conversation. But like when you're starting a business, like you are the business, that means that all of your energy is what's feeding that business. And so if you don't do the inner work, right, to get into alignment, to when you're an entrepreneur, you're always going to hit roadblocks. You're always going to hit obstacles. And I believe that's because when you declare something to the universe, right, you're like, okay, I want to, run $1 million coaching business, right? The universe is going to be like, okay, you desire that. I'm now going to show you everything within you that's out of alignment with that $1 million coaching business so that you can heal it, shift it, clear it, right? Change that pattern so you can get what you want, right? But if you don't understand this, if you don't have this understanding of energy, if you don't have the emotional intelligence and the ability to A, know that's happening, and B, know how to work with yourself when it does happen so you can move through it, learn the lesson, and grow, those roadblocks and those setbacks and those challenges are going to take you out of the game. They're going to make you quit potentially, or they're going to make you stay stuck in a state or experiencing results that you don't want to be experiencing for way longer than you need to be, right? When you understand like how to do inner work, when you understand how to use the situations that trigger you in business and use the situations that suck and use the setbacks as literally fuel for your growth and for your own awareness, there's no way you can't succeed as an entrepreneur in the long run. But if you don't have that understanding, that's why I really believe you see, I don't know what the stats are here, but you see so many people who start a business and quit, right? Or so many people who don't make it to their third year, their fifth year, right? Because they couldn't handle the rejection. They couldn't handle the scarcity early on in business that we all experience, right? And how to navigate that. And so they took themselves out of the game. Right. And so this type of understanding, what I teach, what I work with women on, emotional intelligence, getting your vibes in alignment, all of that stuff that people can like really roll their eyes at, I feel is the most important thing that you should be focusing on as an entrepreneur, because it's what's feeding anything and everything else that you're doing in your business.
Perfect. So if someone is having a moment in their business at the moment and they're like, okay, what the pen do I do? Everything's hitting me at once. Like, let's say someone is really getting into like trying to make money and they can't even make a freaking dollar, or they want $10,000 and they can't make over 100. What is blocking them? Is it like that? How do you handle that vibration? How do you move it forward?
Well, it's going to be different for every single person. So what I'm going to tell you to do, it'll work for anybody. So the first thing you want to do is you want to get in touch with how you feel. Okay. We as human beings do not really know how to navigate our feelings very well, okay? And so when we get triggered, right, a trigger being any emotion that feels uncomfortable to feel, right? So you want to make $10,000 in your business. You're in the third month, you've maybe made $40, right? What are you feeling in that moment? Do you feel ashamed? Do you feel embarrassed? Do you feel scared that you're not going to be able to pay your bills? Do you feel crazy, right? What are you feeling? Okay. And instead of avoiding how we feel, which is the pattern that like most people have going on, right? We need to dive into how you feel, because your emotions are full of intelligence. Your emotions are essentially like your intuition speaking with you in real time, right? And so if you don't honor them and you don't listen to them and you don't process them, right, and work through those limiting beliefs, every emotion is rooted in a thought, right? So we think a thought, that thought, when we're having that mental thought go through our mind, creates a chemical feeling in our body that we register as an emotion, right? So if you think, oh my God, I'm not going to make any money, you feel fear. That fear is a tangible physical sensation happening in your body, but it's the result of the thought that you're thinking. So when we stop avoiding our emotions and we like go in the direction of them and we let ourselves be sad and we let ourselves be afraid and we let ourselves be worried, and we get, what I teach is curiosity and compassion. So we get curious, okay, well, why do I have this emotion? What am I thinking? And we don't do it in a way where we're like harping on ourselves for having the emotion or judging ourselves or, oh my God, I'm going to have another horrible month because I'm upset again. Like that's how we compound things. That's how we spiral. That's how we have breakdowns, right? Instead, we calmly, with love and compassion, get curious about, okay, I'm feeling really scared here. Why is that? What am I thinking about? And then you can, like, when you root out the belief or when you root out the thought, then you get to break it down. Like, is it really true that you're not going to eat at the end of the month? Is it really true? And then there's all of these different tools that you can use to essentially break down those thoughts, right? And start to shift your mindset so that it's in alignment with what you want instead of what you don't want, right? Because when we're afraid or when we're worried, it's often because we're thinking of the outcome we don't want to experience instead of the one that we do. And when we actually let ourselves feel and we actually sit with how we feel instead of trying to take hurried action from this place as a way to avoid how we feel, all of that intelligence becomes available to us and we can get our mindset back on track and reapproach the issue from a totally different vibrational space.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm thinking, like, let's say I'm having a moment, right? And I'm like, oh my God, this isn't working out for me. How do I go from freaking out and that breakdown and wanting ice cream and heading to Whole Foods to at least have some type of healthy ice cream along the way to curiosity and compassion? Because there's kind of a gap there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it takes conscious effort, right? This work, it's not something that's easy for most people who are used to running away from their emotions, right? Like when I started learning all of this, when I started on my own healing path and my entrepreneurial journey, like I was like, like pushing myself away all of the time, right? But the better I became at it, the more that I really, when this is one thing I'll say that'll be tangible that you can take away from this, is when you're noticing yourself in that space where you're really upset, talk to yourself as if you were 3 years old. Like, because there's a part of you inside that's literally 3 years old having that reaction. Like that's literally vibrationally what it's like.
I
right?
don't wanna.
And if you were to like, no, you can't, like if you were to ever talk, you would never talk to that like a kid. Like most of the time, the way that we speak to ourselves in our own heads, we would never speak out loud to another person, let alone a little child, right? So when we're having a moment, when we're having a breakdown, when we're frustrated, when we're upset, when we're so disappointed we can't even handle it, right? Often what we do is we compound the emotion by getting like upset with ourselves for being upset, or upset with ourselves for not being able to get over it, or super upset with ourselves for creating the situation that caused us to be upset initially. And this just does not support us in any way, right? What we really need to do, it's like an inner muscle that you develop the more that you use it, is that when you notice yourself having the breakdown, instead of letting it to get to stage 5 or stage 6 or stage 7 where you're fully freaking out and compounding it, right? Having the emotional intelligence to literally parent yourself in that moment as if you would parent a little girl, right? Okay, what's going on? Okay, it's okay. Take a deep breath, right? Really being compassionate with yourself. And in the beginning for people, and I find a lot of women who are driven to the entrepreneur space, they're women who are more in their masculine, right? So this is something that they're going to struggle with initially because that masculine drive is the more prominent vibe going on. And that's a beautiful vibe. It's necessary, for so many things in life and so many things in business. But when it comes to emotions, it's the feminine that you need to go into. And the more that you practice this dance, the more that you nurture this in yourself, the easier it will get. And you will notice you'll be more successful, and you'll be more successful in this beautiful way of flow and ease, right? A lot of entrepreneurs talk about that. Like, got to get in your flow. And this is what this is, right? When you're able to understand your emotions and better emotionally navigate the situations that trigger you, it gets so much easier because you're not constantly so rocked off your game in these really dramatic ways. So I would say, talk to yourself. Literally, if you're going to take one thing away from all of that, when you're upset, talk to yourself like you're 3. Don't talk to yourself like you're an adult who did something horrible. Talk to yourself like a toddler. It'll really, really help. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let's say I'm trying to think of what's the next step here. It's going to be someone that is confused, for example, in their business, and they're like, okay, well, back to the money situation, right? I'm trying to keep like my ideal client in mind here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's say someone is having difficulty really getting into that flow, like you mentioned flow. How do they get to hear their intuition to really move them forward?
Through their emotions, right? So you can't, if you're constantly blocking off your feeling, then you're not connected to your body, and your intuition is always speaking to you through your body, right? So it's really like, if you're struggling, that is your cue to drop in, right? That is not your cue to go to Google and try and solve the problem with 19 different solutions. It's not your cue to go listen to a podcast. It's not your cue. Often where we're stuck is what we tend to do is we take in all of this information, but we don't actually take the time to integrate it into our lives, right? And the thing is, when we're struggling, we often think the answer is, oh, learn something new. I don't know something well enough, right? You often know what to do. It's just that you're not doing it, right? And so people look for like the quick fix, the quick solution, like, let me just get the right tool, get the right teacher, join the right program, do the right thing. When honestly, like, I believe every entrepreneur's journey is super unique and super individualized. And yes, while there are these, you know, tools and things that people have come onto, you know, an online business that definitely support entrepreneurship, what makes people the most successful is their ability to listen to their inner voice and to bring their authenticity to the forefront. And if you're constantly searching outside of yourselves for your answers, you're never going to be able to do that, right? Because instead of going within, you're constantly looking without, constantly looking to fill whatever knowledge gap you don't know, the tool that you must not have, right? It's this like desperation of seeking outside of yourself, when really what needs to happen is that like internal pivot, and your emotions are always your cue. So the more emotionally intelligent you become as an entrepreneur, the more successful you'll be ultimately in your business.
That's amazing. So when it comes to, I think like the main word that came out in my head was trust yourself, right? And there's a lot of people out there, especially people that you're saying like are in their masculine and not in their feminine. How do they trust themselves enough to actually listen to the feedback that they get from their intuition?
Well, again, that takes time and practice. If you are somebody who doesn't have a great relationship with yourself, where you've been seeking outside of yourself for a very long time for answers, you're going to have to repair that relationship of trust that you have. And the way that you do that is by starting to trust yourself, even when it's scary, even when you don't know it's going to work out, even when your mind or maybe the people in your life or the experts in your field are telling you otherwise. You trust your inner voice, and then you see what happens. And then when you get the result, or it works out, or, you know, something positive happens, you remember that, and it reinforces your trust. And the more that you do this, the more that you see like ultimately your inner voice is guiding you to what's best for you. Initially, it might not always look that way, right? Like when I felt the calling to start my business, it was this very intense, deep calling, and it was a very intuitive calling. But I struggled in business for my first 2 years. And you can bet in those first 2 years, I was like, did I make a mistake? Did I, you know, really wrestled with it? And having seen that through to a certain point now, I can see I should have trusted myself all along, because it's brought me to this level where I've created this amazing life. I have this amazing business. I have this amazing practice. It fills me up so much. But I had to blindly trust that for quite some time. And so it really, I feel like there's not a short way around it, but the most important thing is just to have the courage, right? I think as an entrepreneur, the most important trait that you can have, and the most important thing you should be nurturing in yourself, is your courage. Because every step of your business, right? So we're talking to people right now who are just starting business, right? But you can bet you're going to feel just as scared as you feel right now early on in your business, going live on Facebook for the first time, or putting your first offering out there, as you are 5 years from now, when you're scaling up, when you're charging 10 times more, when you're stepping into these new paradigms. It doesn't go anywhere. The more successful you become, it's not like the less afraid you get. Like, that's not a thing. So courage is something you need at every step of the game in business. And when it comes to learning to trust yourself, it's like super necessary, because in the beginning, you're not gonna have the evidence or the proof yet that this is taking you anywhere. Right? You're going to need to like have the courage, but you're going to need to have the courage to act anyways. Even though your mind doesn't know fully where you're going, when you feel the calling, that's all you can do, is just act anyways with the fear. And that's what courage means, to move and to do and to act along with fear while you're afraid.
To say that, what is courage? That definition that you had to
So
move?
yeah, so courage it's a French, I think it's a French word. So coeur means like heart, right? So to move from the heart, even when you're afraid, right? So that's what it means to be brave. That's what it means to have courage, right? Like you think of people who do courageous things, like they're scared. They're not easy things to do. That's why you need to have the courage to do them, right? And I think self-trust, when you're starting to build trust in yourself or repair trust in yourself, it's going to take courage because you're not going to know initially that it's going to work out. That's the whole reason why you need to trust it, right?
That's amazing. And thank
Yeah.
you for that, for clarifying that. That was amazing. I
Okay.
know, well, first off, what are some tips and techniques that someone could take to really get more courageous, more compassionate, more curious, and really help their vibration uplift so that they can get the ideal clients that they want, so they can have the business that they want? Do you have any tips and techniques along the way to help them?
I think really making a practice of paying attention to how you feel. So whether that's journaling, I know and this is the thing for me, like I think a lot of people teach strategies, tips, and techniques, and that's amazing. And I definitely have a bunch. But what's the most important thing before I go into them is to say, take whatever you feel called to and leave the rest. Because there's no one size fits all formula or list of steps or tips and techniques that are going to work for everyone. And I think where a lot of people get stuck early on in business is they learn from someone, okay, this is the tip that I need to do this thing. And then they start to do it and it doesn't really work for them. And then they start to think there's something wrong with them, or maybe they didn't do it right. And then it just becomes this whole tangent when really, like, what's going to work for you is what's going to be different than what's going to work for me. So I really coach people and tell people to go, when you're in personal development, make sure you're going into that field, developing a solid sense of yourself, and to learn to what feels good for you and what doesn't. Because some tips are going to feel good and some tips aren't. So if what I suggest doesn't feel good for you, that's okay, right? Maybe another one will, maybe another one won't. So I just wanted to speak to that, because I think a lot of people can get really okay, this is the one step, this is the one thing, and I'm going to do this, right? But journaling is, I think, a really beautiful way to make a practice of being in constant kind of awareness of what's going on energetically with you, and to see that. And when we see words on a page, that's always so powerful. Meditation has completely changed my life. I used to have a really strict meditation practice when I started learning, twice a day, doing this type of transcendental meditation, but now I have a really flowy practice. So I try and just sit for whatever it is. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. I do guided. I just let my intuition kind of lead me towards the type of meditation that my body is calling out for that day. Being unplugged and in nature, right? I think as an entrepreneur, a lot of us are addicted to social media. Let's be honest. If you're running an online business, you're probably spending a lot of time on Facebook and Instagram consuming, right? And when we're constantly consuming and when we're constantly bombarded with the messages and the vibes and the things from other people, right? We're not connected to our own voice and we're not paying attention to how we feel. So literally go for a walk without your phone, go for a hike, go be in the vibes of nature, because that will help restore you and help bring forth your own intuition. And I think that's a really important counterbalance for people to have, especially in the modern world, and especially if you're an entrepreneur, because what can really take you off your game a lot of the time is the comparison thing, where you're constantly pulling in everyone else's stuff. And then you're not really nurturing your own voice, and then you're comparing to them, and it becomes this whole thing I'm sure we've all experienced, in our lives. But I would say those three things, just to keep it simple: journaling, meditating, and just unplugging, and especially being outside, will just help you recalibrate with yourself, with your highest self. And all of those activities on their own will work to bring you back into alignment, right? So just experiment and see which ones you like, and see, which ones you want to integrate into your life more often.
Boom, done, drop mic. I'm super happy with this interview, so thank you. So
You're welcome.
This with one last question, unless you have something else you'd like to mention along the way, let me know. All right,
Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
So I have one last question for you, and it's really, what is one action step that someone watching today can take to get aligned to their intuition and really move forward in their business?
One action step someone can take today to get aligned with their intuition and move forward. I would say one thing would be right after you're listening to this interview, right? So right after we conclude, to stop whatever you're doing, to close your eyes and to get in touch with how you feel. Like in this moment, how they feel, right? And to really pay attention to that. And I really believe like a lot of people who consume, summits like this and podcasts and all of the things that are out there, we listen, but then we don't take the time to integrate afterwards. So I would say get in touch with how you feel and then write down the things that stood out to you. Like actually take a step from listening to this, because that will help you start to shift out of this like constantly consuming information stage that can lead to like analysis paralysis, and actually get into the like doing and integrate and soaking it in stage, which is ultimately what's going to get you forward. So stop this recording as soon as we're done and feel your feelings, and then write down what you're vibing and what you feel like you need to integrate or to put in place in your business as a result of this conversation.
Perfect. So really just get in tune with who you are, your feelings, and the way that I imagine it in my head and heart for that matter is really focusing on making sure that I'm speaking or feeling from the heart versus the mind. Because a lot of the time, like when I was starting this interview with you, for example, I was like, I got to create a few questions along the way. And you're like, let's just flow it. And I was like, oh, she's totally heart-based. Okay, Jasmine, get off the mind. Like get into your feminine and whatever you want to call it. It's still feeling heart, feminine, really getting there first. And that's what I've noticed is the main thing to focus on. Getting here first, getting the answer here, and then you can get here. But the main problem is a lot of people start here and never even get anywhere near this. That's where that masculinity comes along. So perfect. That was amazing. Thank you, Alex, for this.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Help me. Like, I'm gonna go journal after this.
Go do it. Do the homework. It'd be awesome.
I appreciate your time, and ladies, know that I will see you tomorrow. Mwah. Bye.
Bye.